Hey, good morning everybody. Rob here in sunny Bakersfield on the Sportster 72. Welcome to this week's edition of Throwback Thursday. This week's going to be a little different. I've had a bunch of requests to know how I got started riding and what bikes I've owned and so forth from new subscribers, like a lot of us get those questions. So I figured I would do a video response in answer to those. Thing is, I've been riding for 50 years and I've had a lot of bikes come and go. So I used to buy them, fix them, ride them and sell them. So I don't remember a lot of them. So I'll just mention the ones that I do remember the most. And I don't have pictures of all of them, but I did find pictures on the internet of what that particular bikes looked like to put those in to give all of you an idea. So to start off, how did I get started riding motorcycles? Well, and how did I learn to ride motorcycles? I would say I am a self-taught rider. I've never taken any courses or lessons on riding. That I would not suggest for all you new people, especially if you're going to be getting a big bike. You need to go take a course, learn how to ride properly. I mean, I could probably learn a few things here and there myself if I went and took a course. But that's neither here nor there. So like everybody else, I would say I started learning how to ride when I was a kid, riding a bicycle. It's pretty much the same thing. You got two wheels on a handlebar. You learn how to balance on the two wheels hanging onto the handlebars. You learn how to balance riding with no hands, popping wheelies, jumping curbs, going off-road, jumping hills and stuff. So I guess that would be the starting point for all of us, is learning to ride a bicycle. It's pretty much the same as learning to ride a motorcycle. Then when you get on a motorcycle, basically the only difference is that you got a clutch, a throttle, gear shifter and brakes, and even when you jump on a brand new bike you've never ridden before, you know, you have to take a little bit of time to adjust to it, see how touchy the clutch is, how much throttle you can give it, and see how the brakes are. So it's the same thing like when you're first starting out. You learn how much clutch to let out, how much gas to give it, and how the brakes work. Didn't take me long to learn. But it started out, I was 15 and a half, had my learner's permit. My older brother Tom had a Honda Super 90 that he rode back and forth to college on. Well, he joined the Marine Corps, went off to officer candidate school, and left the Honda at home and asked me to ride it for him and keep it running. So that was my very first bike I rode on. It wasn't my bike, it was my older brother's bike, but you know, I got to ride it. I rode that thing for quite a long time. And that was where I learned the basics of street riding and learned to watch out for idiots in cars. Because that's the first time I ever had an accident on the street, and the only time I ever had an accident on the street was on that bike. I was going off a freeway off-ramp when a guy came up behind me in a pale green four-door sedan, forced me right off the road into the ice plant, laughing all the way about it. Well, I didn't get injured and the bike didn't get damaged too much. I think I had to replace a lever and the gear shifter and fix a few scratches here and there, but overall it managed to take the crash pretty well because of the ice plant, and so did I. And back in those days, we didn't have helmet laws, so I wasn't wearing a helmet. So if that ice plant had not been there to cushion the crash, it could have been a lot worse story. And that's where I first started learning to work on motorcycles, because now I had to repair my brother's crashed motorcycle. Well, he came back from OCS on leave before getting shipped out to Nam. My parents asked him to sell the bike because they didn't want me riding the bike, so he sold the bike. That left me without a bike, but only for a short time, because I took some money and went out and bought me a used Honda 350 Scrambler. So that was the very first bike I ever owned myself. I kept it over at a friend's house because my dad and mom didn't want me riding bikes because they wouldn't find out about it. So I would jump in my car, which was a 56 Buick Special 4-door. It was the very first car I ever owned. Got that for $300. And I had bought that before I even had my learner's permit. I bought that at 15. So I would get in the car, drive over to my friend's house, get on the bike, go out riding, running around out in the hills, running around on the streets. Bring it back, park at the garage, get in my car and drive back home. Well, his parents found out about it and they didn't think that was right, that I was basically lying to my parents about having a bike, so they said I couldn't keep it there any longer, so I took it home and I told my dad that it belonged to a friend of mine and that I was just going to be repainting it and repairing it for him. So after about 6 months, he kind of caught on and realized that, you know, hey, you're not giving it back to your friend. Then I told him, well, my friend didn't have the money to pay me for the work I'd done on it, so he gave me the bike. Well, they were all ticked off, you know, but wasn't a whole lot they could do, because it come down to the point that either I got to keep the bike and ride it or I was going to leave home. And, you know, my dad being an ex-drill sergeant and career Marine, you know, his thing was, well, fine, then get out. And my mom's thing was, oh, no, you know, you can't leave, you got to stay home, blah, blah, blah. You know how moms are. So anyways, I ended up staying home, having my bike. Excuse me a bit here. And I rode that for quite a while, and in between there, since I had repainted it, friends saw the paint job I'd done on it and everything, so they wanted me to repaint their bikes. So I'd have friends bring their bikes over, drop them off, and, you know, I'd do whatever little repairs maybe they needed, you know, new levers or grips or pegs or something, and take and repaint them and everything, and I'd ride around on them a bit just to make sure everything was working properly. Usually have them for a couple of weeks at a time. I got enough money ahead, I started buying used bikes, repairing them, painting them, riding them and selling them, and I did that so much that I can't remember what they all are, or were. But I would say that most of them were Hondas, Suzuki's, Yamahas, and Kawasaki's, and all of them probably under the 650cc range and above the 125cc range, somewhere in the middle there. Now I was doing that, and then up around I got being 19 years old, and I come across a really good deal. Come on, let's go, screen, on a Harley chopper. So I bought that. So that was my very first Harley. That was a 59 panhead and a 47 wishbone rigid frame with 6 over Springer front end, straight through fishtail upsweep pipes. And I kept that thing, oh God, I kept that all the way up to 84. And over all the years that I had that, from the time I turned 16, I turned 19 and 69, up to the time I sold it in 84, about every couple years I would tear it completely apart, redo the frame and the tanks and the fenders. And in my last little project on it, I was changing it from a chopper style to a bar hopper style, and had a completely different frame and fenders and front end. Pretty much the only thing that stayed the same was the engine and transmission. Now during that time I also continued to have dirt bikes and smaller street bikes. So I had to have something to ride on while I was redoing the Harley. And like I say, they were mostly like Yamaha 250s, Honda 350s, had some Suzukis and Kawasaki's in there. But most of them were all the, what you call the enduro style, which was a street dirt bike back then. I never really had a real sport bike style. And in '84, I got injured at work. Injured my lower back. And this is, I think, the second serious injury to my lower back. I had already had back surgery to it once. And I'd already been paralyzed once before, and that's why I had to have the surgery. And this is a different injury from the gunshot wound and having the bullet pressed against my spine. Well, in '84, I re-injured my lower back and basically screwed up everything they had fixed in the surgery. Oh, that's a bad bump. And I was sitting there in the hospital in traction. The doctors wanted to do a spinal fusion. I didn't want that because I knew if I had that, I'd lose my career, wouldn't be able to go back to work. And they told me I'd never be able to ride again. And they said I had to do something or I'd never be able to walk again. So I went ahead and had the cleanup surgery done, but no fusion. And I was able to get back up on my feet, but not very well. And I was not able to return to work, and that's when the city forced me into disability retirement. I was not able to ride anymore, so that's when I sold off my dirt bikes, my street bikes, and my Harley. And a few months later, we ended up selling the house, selling off all my race cars and everything, because we couldn't afford to live in San Diego anymore off my disability. And I was not able to go back to work anymore. And we moved off to Oregon for 5 years. Up in Oregon during that 5 years, I was bikeless. So we were putting all our money into building a home on the river and getting the 4x4 trucks, getting an RV and riding lawnmower and all that crap. Well, after 5 years, I couldn't take the cold winters anymore, so we moved back here to California, and that's how we ended up in Bakersfield. I made friends with a guy down the street who had a Yamaha 650. And he had crashed it on the very first day he had bought it. And his wife wouldn't let him ride it anymore, so he hadn't repaired it. He just parked it in the garage, and there it sat. Well, I ended up buying that off him for $100. We rolled it down to my house. I went to work on it. Had to do a lot to fix it. Had to fix everything that was damaged in the crash. Had to flush out the gas tank, replace fuel filters and lines, rebuild the carburetors, and got it all running and everything. So I was back on two wheels again. And I rode that 650 for quite a long time. Then decided, well, we want something a little bit bigger so we could travel on it. So I sold that and bought a used Honda Goldwing Aspen cage. My wife and I rode that for quite a while. But the only problem with that was is it set so high up that when I put my feet down on the ground, it would put a strain on my lower back and cause my right leg to go dead, and I wouldn't be able to pick my right leg back up and put it on the floorboard. So, went and sold that after about a year, and then got me a little Harley Sportster 883 Hugger. A used one. I put 4 controls on it and some shorty mufflers and ran around on that thing for quite a while, had a lot of fun with it. And then in 2001, I decided I want something bigger, something that sat low to the ground, had low seat height. I was looking at the Harley Softails. And I wanted to get one of those with a Springer front end on it. But I couldn't find any for sale around, other than new ones, and I didn't want to spend the money on a brand new one and then have to spend a whole bunch of money customizing it. Well, I came across this ad in the magazine for the Custom Chrome Industries kit bike. And this company that was putting them together on, you could pick whichever engine, transmission, tire size, front ends, frames, basically pick and choose whatever you wanted on your custom bike. So I contacted them and made a deal with them and got my Softail after the last, 14 years now? And it was dependable up until about 2 years ago. I started having problems. The big thing there was the cream sealant in the gas tank went bad and turned into like Elmer's glue. Clogged up the fuel filters, the fuel lines, the carburetor. And, you know, from age, I started having things going wrong. Had to replace the front master brake cylinder, rebuild the rear master brake cylinder, rebuild the calipers, replace the rotors. And as those of you who watch my channel know that the inner primary was cracked, well, it started cracking about 2 years after I got it. But I was always able to repair that crack with JB Weld. Well, this time it cracked completely off. The whole piece came off. And JB Weld wasn't going to fix it, so I had to replace the inner primary. So that's where I went out and I bought this Sportster 72 here about a year and a half ago. So I'd have something to ride back and forth to work on. So that brings you up to date to today. I've got the Softail, it's 14 years old. That's going to be my project bike because as age comes along, things start wearing out and breaking. And this is going to be my daily rider. And like I said before, I'm a self-taught rider. And I learned most of my riding skills probably riding the back hills of San Diego County on dirt bikes. And pushing the limits and having a lot of crashes in the dirt, but only one crash on the street so far, and that was on my brother's Honda Super 90. So that's my story about my bike history, how I got started riding, how I learned to ride, and what bikes I've owned, for the most part, the ones I can remember. So I will catch y'all next week. So come back at the end of the week. We'll have the lane splitting videos. We'll have this throwback Thursday. And if I'm lucky, there will be a test ride on the Softail. So I'll see y'all later. Be sure and hit that like button and give me some comments and subscribe for further videos. Adios, amigos.